We want to honor your time and begin by just thanking you so very much for being with us today. I'm Trudy Arriaga, and I am a proud ACSA member. I've been an ACSA member for as long as I can remember, and proud to be here with my colleagues, and I'm just really honored to be able to share the information and the fact that we have so many in attendance this afternoon. So thank you so much. I come to you from Ventura, California, Region 13, and I was a former superintendent of the Ventura Unified School District for 14 years, started my career as a bilingual paraeducator, and had many people who tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know what, you'd be good. And so let us never forget the power of the tap as we support and promote each other. I'd like to introduce my colleagues, and I'm going to start with Dr. Stacie Stanley, who is with us all the way from Minnesota, and is one of the co-authors in Leading While Female. Stacie.
Thanks a lot, Trudy. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you. I don't know if I get the award from coming for the longest distance, but I am coming to you from Minnesota, and it is just delightful. I've had an opportunity to work with ACSA before, and it's just great to be with you. Our organization here in Minnesota is MASA, and so I'm coming to you representing the Minnesota Association in Region 9. It's just delightful to be able to be here with so many leaders, so many that are so interested in this work around raising the efforts and noticing the leadership and the leadership skills that women bring to the profession. So glad to be here with you.
Thank you, Stacie. And Dr. Delores Lindsey, everyone's best friend.
Thank you, Trudy and Stacie, my best friends. Best BFFs. Delighted to be with you all this afternoon and evening, depending on where you are in the country. I've been an ACSA member for a long time. I moved to California in the mid-'80s, just in time for the middle school reform. And I became an assistant principal and joined ACSA right away in a district in east of Los Angeles. And I've been in Southern California since then. Went on to be a principal of a middle grade school out in San Bernardino County, and then joined county offices for California School Leadership Academy work. That was in San Bernardino County and then Orange County, and then working in higher ed with Pepperdine University, and then here in San Diego County with Cal State San Marcos. And before coming to California, grew up in the Deep South, and I mean the Deep South, Mississippi, Louisiana. All my family still back there, family and Southern friends, maybe some on our session today, but I say good afternoon to everybody, and delighted to be with you all this afternoon for Leading While Female.
Thank you so much, Delores. And I currently represent Cal Lutheran University. I'm the Associate Dean of Equity and Outreach in the Graduate School of Education. And I'm very pleased to always represent Cal Lutheran, one of our very finest universities in the state of California. So we are thrilled to be with you, and we want to begin by thanking ACSA for hosting this presentation, this opportunity, as well as the numerous opportunities that have been offered through this pandemic. I have been absolutely in awe of the number of opportunities that have been afforded to all of us through ACSA virtually. And I don't know about you, but I've attended many and have benefited from all. And so I really want to thank ACSA Member Services, and I'd like to highlight and thank Margarita Quizon Armelino, who is, a friend to all, and such a strong support of leadership in this state, and certainly a support of women as leaders in the state of California. So thank you to ACSA and Member Services We also would like to thank partners who have made this possible today. And partner 4, the number 4, P Purpose, spotlight featuring Orenda Education. And I'm going to ask Josh if he would play the 60-second recorded video of Robin, and just want to thank Orenda as being one of our partner sponsorships. And I will tell you also that they have offered a prize, an Orenda prize, and Margarita is going to be selecting the lucky recipient, and so be looking for your name in the chat. This might be your day. So Josh, if you would go ahead and play the video for us, please.
I'm excited to introduce the founder and CEO of Orenda Education, Dr. Robin Avalar II.
Well, hello, everybody. There's no warrior more dangerous and more effective and impactful than a woman with a passion. What I'd like to do is to share 2 equity actions. In this pandemic world, obviously, we're concerned with health and safety. Above all, we can lead with our educational sound foot. Let's make decisions that are educationally sound, and then make sure that they're also safe and healthful. Here's the second equity action that's related. Would that be something we would accept prior to the pandemic? For example, would we pre-pandemic make the following decision? Let's group all the kids who struggle and put them together on campus and have everybody else be off campus. Would we do that? Would that be okay? Obviously not, yet that's the guidance we're getting right now. If we don't remember what the floor is, what's acceptable, that line under which we will never go, no matter what, then no one else will. Let's be the voice for that. The definition of Orenda is the energy force inherent in every person that gives us the power to change the world and to change ourselves. So with that, I wish this amazing group of women Orenda all day today and every day after. Thanks so much and have a wonderful conference.
And again, we want to thank Orenda Education for their partnership. I also would like to now introduce Dr. Kim Lu Lau, who is the director of East Vale STEM Academy. And Dr. Lau is just going to remind us why we would want to make certain that we are members of ACSA, that we promote ACSA, that we utilize ACSA, and that we are proud supporters of ACSA. Dr. Lau.
Good evening, everyone. Equity warriors, champions, whatever we are for our students. First of all, I want to thank our authors for joining us. We did our Leading While Female book study back in October, and I had picked up the book, and my intention was to meet with a few ladies, 3 or 4, and next thing you know, we had a district-wide. And so I want to thank Doctors Arriaga, Stanley, and Lindsey for joining in on that. So I'm Kim, and I am the director with Corona Norco Unified School District in Riverside County in Southern California, ACSA Region 19. I've been in education for 21 years, in administration for 10 of those 21 years, but I did not join ACSA until 2016 when I was urged and encouraged by one of my female colleagues. She goes, "You need to join ACSA so you can get the discount for the Women Network Leadership event in Newport Beach, California." So I did, but I did not expect to show up and see all of these female leaders. And I was so inspired. And, I truly believe in the word, you can't be what you can't see. And so when I saw female leaders, women of color in leadership position, Asian American female leaders, and I was just so inspired. I said, this is a place that I need to be, because prior to that, I was working as an administration assistant principal of a high school, and I felt like I was leading in a tunnel, right? Just a very narrow vision. And so after that, I got very involved in ACSA, attending all of the network events, attending seminars. I'm also in the Superintendent's Academy, and just, the networking piece. And I feel like I now have a bigger vision, and I do have a network outside. And through ACSA, I'm also a part of an Asian American Pacific Islander group through ACSA. And so we're all ACSA members, but we're just meeting outside and just supporting each other. And so I feel like ACSA has been it has played a very important role in my professional development and leadership. So thank you, ACSA. And I think it's just, I don't know, I encourage every time I meet, are you an ACSA member? Every time I meet a new leader, are you an ACSA member? You need to join. So I don't know, it's benefited me, and I'm sure all of you in here who are ACSA members can say the same thing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lau. And again, if you're in a position to support others to be members of ACSA, please do so. If you have the opportunity to support yourself, to become more involved, to take on leadership roles, ACSA needs all of us. And so thank you to ACSA again for your support. Josh, if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. Again, you've met my co-authors and my dear friends, and we have the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon about Leading While Female. Leading While Female is a culturally proficient response for gender equity, and Delores and Stacy and I, for about 2 years, met literally around the Lindsey's kitchen table. Stacy would fly in from Minnesota, and I would drive in from Ventura to Escondido, and we would spend the weekend working, laughing, crying, drinking wine, and sharing stories, doing the research, assigning tasks, and let me tell you why we decided to write this book. Next slide. Our first why was the quote from Toni Morrison, our beloved Toni Morrison, scholar, poet, writer, visionary. Toni Morrison said, if there is a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must be the one to write it. And I remember seeing that quote a long time ago and always wanting to have read a book about women in educational leadership, our unique challenges, our unique barriers, and thinking about educational leadership from all perspectives, from the research of intersectionality and the research of feminism and the research of equity and access and cultural proficiency. So together, the three of us decided that Toni Morrison was talking to us, that we wanted to read the book, and so we must be the ones to write it. We had a couple other whys. Let me tell you our next why. Next slide, please, Josh. When we did the research, there was some very compelling data that we'd like to share with you. You may or may not be aware that 77% of the teachers in this nation are female. If you look at the data, at the disaggregated data of who we are as females, 80% of the 77% of the female teachers are white women, only 7% African American, 9% Hispanic, Latina, and 2% Asian. And when we looked at that data, that was data in which we can, certainly be proud as women. Certainly, we look at that data and ask ourselves questions in terms of why would the percentages of the intersectionality of who we are fall out like it does in our nation. And also, when we looked at that data, we discovered that the women are in the elementary schools and men are in the high schools and secondary levels. And the next piece of data, compelling data that we looked at, next slide, please. If that was true, if 77, over 3/4 of the women, of the teachers in this nation are women, then how is it possible that only 52% of us are the site leaders? How is it possible that we went from 77 to 52%? And of those 52%, 54% of us are at the elementary schools and only 26% at the secondary levels. And again, you can look at who we are as women in those positions. So we immediately saw a disconnect in the data. And if that doesn't grab you, how about this next slide?
The next slide.
The next slide, thank you. If that didn't grab you, how about this one? How about the fact that in 2019, 24% of the superintendents in this nation are women? So although we are good at leading a classroom, at managing 30 kindergartners, at teaching science to 34 middle schoolers, we are competent, we are skilled, we are those people. But yet somehow we are not the leaders who lead school districts. And if you look at that, 24% of the women of the superintendents in this nation are women. But that means that 75% are men, 3 in 4 are men, and only 1 in 4 are women. And then look at the women of color, 6%. Women of color in this entire nation are leading our school districts. I also just encourage you, as you look at this data, to look at 2015, 27%, and then for the first time, we're backsliding. How on earth could we be backsliding? I think we could spend another hour just talking about why might we be backsliding and what might be the reason for that. But certainly, as we move forward into the future, we keep hearing that the future is female. I prefer to say the present is female. I think the present is female. And my favorite quote that has come out of the recent elections, and having our first vice president of the United States is a female, that put on your shoes, ladies, because there is glass all over the floor. And so let's get our shoes on and make absolute certain that the present is female. We're not talking about the future, we're talking about the present. I want you to look at 1971. I was a high school student in 1971. I couldn't find a role model, a female superintendent to save my soul. 1% in the entire nation. I could not look up and find myself as the high school principal. I couldn't find myself as a CBO. I couldn't find myself as the director of technology. I couldn't find myself. Maybe I could find myself as the dean of girls, and possibly I could find myself as the elementary school principal in the 70s. I became a superintendent in the year 2000. There were 14% of us. And I have to tell you, that is when I became very, very aware of my gender. That very first conference I attended, and I went to the registration desk so excited on an August afternoon in Northern California, first superintendent's conference. And the woman who was at the table registering looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. The teacher conference is across the street." And I said, "Well, actually, I'm here for the superintendent's conference." "Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed. And then I went inside and I couldn't find, there were tables of 8 and I couldn't find a woman to sit by. And that was just in the year 2000. So we're not talking about our grandmother's stories. We're talking about our stories. And if I could, Josh, if you could back up to the slide that we just saw, and just know that the framework for our work was really centered around the data, the research, and the stories of feminism, educational leadership, intersectionality, cultural proficiency, and allyship. And so as we move forward in our hour together with you, I hope that you'll hear those themes and recognize those themes. Next slide, please. And the next one. So before we move forward on this slide with each story, here's one more reason that one more of our whys. As we started doing the research, we began to hear stories, story after story after story, from colleagues throughout this nation, female leaders throughout the nation. Some of the stories we could completely relate to. They were our stories. Some of the stories were new stories, but they had common themes. And we would like you to just sit for a moment, put your phone down, just listen for a moment. And as you listen to these 10, 11 brief commentaries, brief vignettes, we would ask you to think about, is this your story? Or do you know this story? Are you familiar with this story? Have you been a part of this story? And so let's just begin with the first story. Oh, sorry, Stacy.
If you expect to become a principal in this district, you're going to have to start acting more like a man.
Well, you know,
Next. Stacy again.
You may have heard this one. Your natural hair is just not professional. And by the way, you just need to smile more.
You are going to have to get rid of that Southern accent. You know, that thing you do.
I can't promote you now. You are so good in your current position. We need you to stay put.
Well, we just need for you to be, you know, like more of a boss.
You're not ready yet. This job requires tough decisions, and it's his turn.
Well, you are great. You're wonderful, but you know, I'm just not sure that you're a match for our district.
You're definitely qualified for the job, but you'd be required to stay late and lock up. And as a gentleman, I just can't ask a woman to do that.
For this position, I am looking for a strong, courageous, and tough leader. Not sure those are your strengths. You tend to wear your heart on your sleeve.
How in the world do you do it all? Your husband must be a saint. And by the way, who keeps care of your kids? And where did you get those shoes? We wonder if you've heard those stories. We wonder if you've experienced those stories. We wonder as you think about what steps can be taken to disrupt the gender-biased actions that lead to barriers for women in leadership and impact all students. What we would like to do is just stop for a moment and ask you if you would in the chat, and I'm beginning to see comments already, but what statement would you have added to that story? What statement have you heard? You know, have you been told to smile more? Have you been told you're not ready yet? Have you been told it's his turn? Let us take a look at a few of your stories in the chat. You're too nice. You shouldn't dye your hair. You're too blunt. Smile less, you're too happy. You're so young.
Speak less with your hands.
You need to be more maternal.
You're too aggressive.
Watch your face, watch your tone.
You're too tenacious. You're too vocal.
He deserves it more than you do. You're too intense.
High school principals don't look like you.
You need to have tough skin.
Oh, it's too bad you're leaving the classroom.
You really look so young to be a principal. So you are not short on giving your own stories. I can't get enough of these. You know, don't try to climb too fast. That's a great one. Don't be too eager. So thank you for sharing what came to you within minutes. And so here's what this is not. This is not about male bashing. And this is not a pity party of, poor us as women. Absolutely, to the contrary. This is just really about recognizing that the stories are real, that the gender inequities are real, they're substantial. And it isn't enough for us just to recognize them. but it's about, what are we going to do about this? What are the actions that each and every one of us will take? I haven't been able to look carefully at who's here with us, but I hope that there are men here. This book was written by 3 women. It was, for the most part, written about women and our women's experiences, but it's written for men and women. It's written for all of us. All of us have a responsibility to ensure that women have access and opportunity and open doors to leadership. And so let's just take a look at what's some of the steps that can be taken to disrupt gender biased actions. And we're going to share with you some of the support factors that we found in our research. And I'm going to ask Stacie and Delores some questions that can highlight some of the research. So next slide, please. The essential elements for support. We absolutely identified the barriers. And honestly, you've identified the barriers just in your stories. We saw the barriers. You identified the barriers. And we don't want to get stuck there. We don't want to get stuck on just speaking about the barriers. We want to go straight to, what do we do about this? Whose responsibility? What's my part? What's my role? And so as we look at the essential elements of support factors, we certainly can relate those to the barriers as well. Next slide, please. So let's just take a look at these support factors. The first one is that we found a support factor that needs to happen within school districts is that women need to be promoted in pathways to the executive cabinet level. I want you to think for a minute. Women start as elementary school teachers, then maybe they become the teacher on special assignment or the mentor teacher, and then maybe the coordinator of curriculum. Stacie, tell us about your thoughts regarding that traditional pathway that females have, and why we should reconsider the standard route of elementary teacher and on.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I want to say that I am a product of that traditional pathway. I left the classroom. I became an instructional coach in mathematics. I was a math teacher. Now, what is fascinating is for women at the time that I entered into the field of teaching, a secondary female math teacher was still pretty rare. I taught with all men in my math department. And yet I landed in the pathway of moving into curriculum, assessment, and instruction, which was a passion of mine. Don't get me wrong. I mean, those are very incredibly important areas. And yet we know that oftentimes individuals who hold such influence and authority are in positions of director of operations. I did see that there's someone with us who is a director of technology, and I just want to give you a shout out. I know that you are probably that only female and isolated in that position. And when you think about the role that you had this year or this spring in advancing the supports for students, advancing the supports for teachers, and in a way that quite honestly, many individuals who haven't had to think outside of the norm, which again, we're not here to bash men, but oftentimes men just have not been in the position to think outside of what their norm is. That was limiting for me. The other thing that I would add in there is oftentimes that some intersectionality pieces is, as an African-American woman, the pathway that was there for me to move from the principalships, I was an elementary principal, but the first pathway that could get me to move from elementary principal was into an equity position, a director of equity. Now, again, that is a really important role in every district. And oftentimes individuals, and I found myself in the same position, who were in those roles, I didn't have the influence to make a significant difference with just broad difference across the schools in our district. And so what's really important is making certain that we set our eyes and our sights on roles that are going to have greater influence. you know, the budgetary influence, the hiring influence in our systems. We've been talking about increasing the percentage of teachers of color or even individuals of color in the superintendency. If you don't have a pipeline for individuals of color to move into the superintendency, you will not have a greater number of individuals of color in the superintendency. So it is so important to really look at where are they being picked from, where are those associate superintendents being picked from, and then it is okay for us to get our foot in the door so that we can move into those roles, so that we can then start tapping them on the shoulder as well.
Thank you, Stacie. And you know what we found is those traditional pathways of women takes us forever to get to the executive cabinet level, if we get there at all. Whereas our male colleagues start at the secondary level, become the assistant principal at the high school principal, boom, assistant sup of HR, boom, superintendent. Whereas our path is long and arduous and often a pitfall rather than actual pathway. Another support factor that we found in the research is just the whole HR process, the interview process, the recruitment process, the retention process. And, you know, Delores, as you think about your experiences as a woman in leadership, were there times that you knew that interview recruitment process was not working for you and that there were barriers to you as a woman in leadership? Oh, you're muted, Delores.
Call, so I try not to disrupt everybody else with that. Thank you. I have a couple of examples of that, and I just want to remind everybody that as culturally proficient leaders, we want to constantly examine current policies and practices that are in place, and just to make sure that there are not things in place that are defining inequities, and that we can really look at the current inequities. We know that it's not just about recruiting more people of color, but it's about examining the current practices and supporting the women and women of color that we currently have in our systems and the interview process. And then as we're hiring women of color and leaders of color, what's built in the system to support them while they're there. I'm old enough to remember quotes like, oh yeah, we hired a woman once and it just didn't work out. And this is in higher ed as well. And I say that, you know, some people, it sounds like a joke, but it's not. And what happens is, especially women of color, they're hired and then there's nobody there to support them while they're in the system. And they're hired as the only one, and then they're left as the only one without any support. And so we really want to look at the current system. This is part of the systemic isms that are in place, alive and well still in our systems. I did interview for a director position, director of instruction. I felt very strong as a principal that I was well prepared for that next level. And in the process of being interviewed, and the interview was set up in a very uncomfortable way in the first place, a single chair, and then 12 people to interview up, and they were all seated up on a stage. And right in the middle of the interview, the assistant sup for HR, who's female, walked in and excuse me, the assistant superintendent for instruction, walked in and paced all around the back of the interview panel, and then just stopped in the process and said, I have one question. What makes you angry? And everybody on the panel looked around, and it was obviously a kind of an interruption. And she just said, I just like to ask other women what makes them angry. And I thought to myself, you know, if I were a man sitting here, would she ask that question? So I answered the question, and there are not many things that make me angry except people who ask questions about what makes me angry. And I finished the interview. I started out and I walked down the hallway to the exit, and I turned around and I went back to the HR office and I said, would you please withdraw my application? And the assistant said, oh, I thought you would want to join our district. And I said, I really would like to just withdraw my application. It just did not feel comfortable at all. So I think we all have to be mindful of our recruiting, our interview processes, and who's in the interview process as well, and what are those questions that we're asking. I worked in a district that really, I was a consultant working with a district who was willing to examine their current interview questions and their procedures. And they revised quite a bit of their policy and their practices till they got right down to in the room, the final conversations. And the last comment was, and as a person on the panel confided in me later, you know, it came down to two people, one a person of color from out of the district, and then one a person in the district and a white person. And the HR person said, you know, we just better go with the person we know. And that was the way the processes had been over years and years. So even changing the policies and the practices, you still have to work on changing the culture of organizations. And that's probably the toughest of all, is changing that culture. But talking about who are we as an organization, and then are we who we say we are, getting those questions on the table about who are we as an organization and who do we want to be with us in this organization.
Thank you, Delores. And, you know, whether you're an assistant principal or a principal or an assistant soup of HR, director of HR, we all have responsibility to be involved in the recruitment, interview, retention process. And so, you know, take the opportunity to look at the questions you ask. Mm-hmm. Start before that. Take the opportunity to look at where and how and the words that are described in the advertisement of the position. You know, is it courageous and steadfast, and words that immediately a woman would look at and say, oh gosh, I'm not sure they're talking to me. Who's on the panel? You know, is there gender diversity? Is there diversity on that panel? A very important one is who makes the reference calls? You know, is the person who is making those reference calls one who is already biased, you know, who already has their favored candidate? So many opportunities for us to really look at the HR process and make sure that not only, you know, do women get through the door, but we escort women through the door. And we make sure that women know that they are welcome. It isn't enough for us to look at, for example, the executive cabinet and look to see who's at the table. We also have to look and see who's not at the table. Mm-hmm. And we're not looking for seats at the table as women. We're looking for voices at the table. That's a different concept, isn't it? And I don't know about all of you, but I'm not afraid to eat alone. You know, so if I need to be at my own table and invite you to sit at my table, invite you to have a voice at my table, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a revamping of the HR process and making sure that it is not embedded in inequities. And if we say, well, that's ridiculous, then we go back to the data and say, no, wait a minute. 1 in 4 superintendents in this nation are females. Wait a minute, 6% of the superintendents in this nation are females of color. I think we've got work to do. And I think we have some evidence that we're not ready to laminate ourselves. You know, our job is not done. The next support factor we found was just the support and mentoring of women. And we really want to make sure that we drive this one home. We found in our research that sometimes we are our own worst enemies, that we oftentimes don't support each other. There's almost that aspect of pull up the ladder, I'm up. My father used to say that, pull up the ladder, I'm up, you know, and or that aspect of I'm the extraordinary one. I'm the only woman in the room, you know, look at me, versus, oh my gosh, I don't want to be the extraordinary one. I want to be one of many. And I have a responsibility to pull others up, to reach out, to tap someone on the shoulder to say, you'd be great. Stacie tells the story of how someone called her and said, you know, I implore you to hire this man. That we make those phone calls, and we use verbs like implore. You know, I implore you to hire this unbelievably talented woman. And that we really sponsor and mentor women with intention. I want to give a shout out right now to ACSA's mentor program. Do you know that in every region you have a region coordinator? And if you are in a new position, first or second year, ACSA will provide you free of charge to you with a mentor outside of your district, someone who has done the job you're doing and who has done it well. And so don't be afraid to reach out to the resources that are available to you. And I want to just ask Stacie and Delores. Stacie, did you have female or male mentors in your career?
You know, my mentors were males. My mentors who tapped me on my shoulder, whether it was Frank Hernandez, who's now at the University of El Paso, or whether it was Joe Wimette, who is now retired, they tapped me on the shoulder and they let me know that I needed to go back to school for my 4-year degree in education, or that I needed to come out of the classroom and I needed to move into a leadership role. Dr. Carl Thompson, he actually said to me, you know, I really think that you need to be a principal. You need to move into that principalship. You're going to really better understand. I was in a director of equity role. You're going to better understand what is happening in all of the schools. And so while I did have one female mentor, the vast majority of them were males. Now that shouldn't surprise us though, because we said that 76% of the superintendents are males. Those are the folks who are in those positions to tap people on their shoulders, quite honestly.
Yeah.
My mentors have been male. I had a female, a superintendent who declared herself to be mentors for all the women in the district. But she struggled in that role. And she would give us feedback, and sometimes it was not helpful feedback. So that the comment that you made earlier, Trudy, that sometimes the women that recognize themselves as mentors are not that helpful to us. The male mentors that I had and have still kind of clear the way. And it's because of the male dominance in the executive education field. And because they're there, and it's what they do to mentor other males about the importance of having women in the organization. So I value, and the mentor that I had, he was principal when I was assistant principal. It was advice that he gave me, but it was about, you're ready. And I think that part of the research that we found about women is that we are often very competent. We're just don't hold the confidence that we need, and the confidence that our male counterparts hold. Remember when the research that we found that many women wait to apply for a job until we 100% meet the qualifications on a job application, whereas our male counterparts will apply for a position when they meet about 65 or 70% of those qualifications. And often they get the position and we do not. So sometimes we need mentors to say, yes, you're ready. Even though you may not meet the full list of qualifications, you will grow into those positions. So I think sometimes we sell ourselves short a little bit, and it takes our mentors to support us in that growth process.
Delores, I would add, we are well skilled and we are well certificated. Most of us have many postgraduate degrees, and yet we still believe for some reason that we have to wait a little bit longer to garner a little bit more experience to move into those roles. And you know, that's where I say that there is research around that. That's called the imposter syndrome, where we just think we don't have what we need to be successful. And we have it, ladies. We have it. We are ready to move in. And not only do we have that, we also have different gifts and talents that our male counterparts don't hold just because of their life experience. We have different life experiences.
And you know,
I'll share another story that in our interviews, I was sharing the story that often advertisements for superintendents will advertise for strong instructional leaders. And so when women apply, they have a strong background in instructional leadership. So they will emphasize that part. Then the person that gets the job is the male who has a strong background in budget, finance, or personnel, HR. And so when we got closer into the research, deeper into the research, we found that women were not emphasizing that part of their backgrounds. They would apply specifically for what the application asked for. And so as I was telling that story, after the workshop or the session, a woman of color came up to me and she said, I have applied 3 times for a superintendent's position, and I have never spoke about my qualifications, of the millions of dollars budget that I have supervised, of the number of times I've served on HR committees, and I have written HR policy, but I've applied as an instructional, my strengths as an instructional person because that's what they've asked for. And each time they hired a male who was strong in business and the other one in HR. And she said, it never dawned on me that that's what I was missing, that I was not giving myself credit for the strength, that even though I was applying for what they were asking for, I denied myself those jobs.
so talk about, you know, competence. We are absolutely competent. I teach in the doctoral program, and 90% of the educational leaders in the doctoral program are women. We are well prepared. And may we seek to make sure that we have the confidence in recognizing and honoring our competence, and really seek to mentor each other. As you walk out this evening, I hope that you'll think about a person, a woman that you can mentor, a woman who would really benefit from knowing, you know, what is it like to be an assistant principal. And that is not for a moment to say that our male mentors have not been effective and appreciated. Absolutely. But I can tell you, I craved a female mentor because my challenges were unique. My experiences were unique. My family life was unique. I had unique aspects of my leadership where I just wanted someone else to talk to me about, you know, how do you juggle the role of being a mother, a superintendent, and a wife, and a sister, and a daughter. And so let's make sure that we take that particular support factor very, very seriously. And if we think, you know, we're doing a good job, I go back to the data. I say, wait, we're 1 in 4. How's that working for us? You know, we need each other. Next slide, please, Josh. The next support factor is that organizations value the multiple perspectives and talents and capabilities and voices of women. we have unique experiences. We have a lens that is different from that of our male counterparts. We have talents that are different. And so that organizations value those multiple perspectives. And again, we want more than a seat at a table. We want our talents and voices to be heard and honored and recognized. And also that we recognize and seek to eliminate biases in the workplace. I want you to just think for a minute about your workplace. Do you see biases? Do you see biases in policies that do not allow for job sharing? When that happens, that's no harm to a man. That harms us as women. Or policies that organizations that do not have places for nursing mothers to go during the work. I mean, there are just so many opportunities for us to think about biases that exist within the workplace. And, Stacie, as you think about recognizing and seeking to eliminate biases in the workplaces, what's one that comes to mind for you?
It's really good. Something good you brought up, because I think the pandemic, more than any other time, has demonstrated just how hard women are working, whether they're working in the classroom or whether they are working in that principal office. And so I think for me, one of the biases that I'm working on as an associate superintendent in my current role right now is to open those doors for women to have more flexibility, quite honestly. I have principals that I supervise that have little ones at home. And so as we transitioned into, we were in a hybrid model initially, and we transitioned into a distance model. As we put together a plan for, what we would expect for our principals, I wanted them to have that flexibility. I know that they are able to not juggle, but quite honestly, multitask and handle many things at a time. And I knew that they could do that from their home offices as well. And so some of the biases are, if you're at home with your kids and you can't possibly be doing quality work. Well, I say we are doing quality work all the time, and we've been doing that for hundreds of years now. And so I wanted that door to be open, that they could be in their home offices. I think also some of the biases that are there, just in particular for women of color, are moving past the melanin. That's what I call it, moving past the melanin. And that is that idea that we, as women of color, are only hired for our melanin, are only hired for our ethnicity, and really dropping below that surface, that iceberg, that we talk about. We see what's above the surface, but what comes with that? So as a Black woman, as a Latina, as an Asian woman, as an Indigenous woman, what we have to know, what we bring to the table. We have to know how our past experiences allow us to connect with community members in a different way. We have to know how engaging with families and with students in a different way is definitely a benefit, and it's a skill set that other folks don't necessarily bring to the table. And we have to be able to speak to that in the interviews as well. I remember as we were conducting the research, there was one individual who had just secured a superintendency. And she said when she was at that table, she told the school board, you're not only going to get me, you are going to get my networks as well. And my networks are different than the networks that the male who held this role has. And so that's really important. We, as women of color, we have to know that we bring a different set of networks to the table that can help to engage with the networks that are already there to help that organization flourish.
And in our research, we recognize that the aspect of women and men, the whole aspect of ensuring that we did not look at it as a binary woman versus man, that we sought to eliminate biases for members of our LGBTQ+ community, also for members of faith communities that were not necessarily of the majority culture faith. And so when we were talking about seeking to eliminate biases, there are no parentheses except for, or a comma, unless. We're talking about a punto. We're talking about a period at the end of a sentence, that we seek to eliminate biases in the workplace, and that we are actively a part of that elimination process. Next slide, please, Josh. The last three that we would just like to point out to you, and by the way, we are going to hold 15 minutes at the very end for questions. So we're going to stop sharing our screen. We want to see each other and be able to respond to some questions that you might have. The next one is to recognize and value the unique challenges of home and in the home lives of women. Our research showed that women are still very much a part of the traditional bedtime story, baths, making dinner, all that comes with that. And so valuing and recognizing those unique challenges and making those an asset of a woman's contribution, not a deficit. That we don't have principals meetings that last till 6:30. That impacts a woman. That we recognize that women have children of their own to make sure that they are caring for, and some of us, and myself included, we have aging parents, and so just recognizing the value and the unique challenges of women in their home lives. I recall in my early superintendency, I came home and said to my husband Raimundo, I said, I'm not going to be home for the next 24 nights. I've got wind ensemble on Tuesday and football game on Thursday, and I rattled off, and he very quietly said to me, "That's not going to work for me, Trudy." And I said, "Well, I'm very sorry. It's just the job of the superintendent." He said, "Hear me clearly. It's not going to work for me." And, at that moment, I needed a female mentor. I needed someone to help me. I went back to the executive cabinet the next day and I said, I have some unique challenges. And at the time, the executive cabinet were all males. When I became the superintendent, it was superintendent and all males, and all white males, with the exception of one African-American male. And I had to say to them, I have some very unique challenges, and women, whether we like it or not, we are held to higher standards. We are expected to be more visible, more accessible, more, on top of things, and we run the race as fast as we can. And in this case, I was able to say to my executive cabinet members, I need your help. I need your help. I'm not willing to give up my marriage here, and 24 nights is not going to work for him. And so, we have unique challenges. The next one is to establish and encourage women's networks. Delores, tell us what a women's network looks like.
Well, right now on Facebook, it's a growing network of about 1,600 women on our Leading Wild Female Facebook group. Networks often look like women supporting women. And we've also noticed networks are growing through book studies. We are so encouraged by the folks that are using this book as a way to network and grow together professionally, because the way we wrote the book, really, we wanted people to engage in reflection and engage in conversation. Men have been networking on the golf course. We heard a conversation this morning about a group of men networking around basketball early in the morning on the basketball courts before school starts. Women, we need to network wherever we can. We need to look for sponsors, sponsorships for our careers. We just talked about work, life balance, self-care. Evidently men have been doing okay with that. So what does that look like? COVID has brought on another level of stress, and talking with a group the other morning on Zoom, The mom was a teacher on a Zoom conversation. The dad was an administrator on a Zoom conversation, and 3 children were at different rooms in the household on their classroom Zoom. Now think about families that don't have access. Think about administrators and district leaders Zooming from all day long, being in school classrooms as well, the complications that Zoom has brought on to for health and safety reasons. We have to look for ways that we can work together and ways to balance things better for our lives, taking care of ourselves. And networks can certainly help us do that. Men can help us develop networks. We don't need them. It's nice to have men join with us. I'll take that next bullet, Trudy, that just ensuring that men as allies are in the boardroom and the locker room. We need men as part of the allyship, because there are more of them in the boardroom. There are more of them in the locker rooms. And my husband, Randy, is he mentors so many men and women in the profession. And he constantly says that he enjoys mentoring women and men, but women into the organizations. But he constantly has to mentor men in the organization or up the organization about the importance of having women in the organization because of the skills and talents that they bring. And it's about breaking through that glass ceiling. It's about doing things differently, adapting to change and overcoming the barriers. One of those barriers being the unawareness of the need to adapt, or the just the system of oppression that's been in place for many, many years, and being able to overcome those barriers through those networks and through the allyship.
Thank you, Delores. And I would add one more, is that we are planning a Leading Well Female Conference, March 20th, 2021. And it is going to be female-led. It's going to be a day that you don't want to miss. And so certainly there will be information forthcoming, but mark your calendars for March 20th. I think it's a day of networking that you wouldn't want to miss. Next slide, please, Josh. As we're moving into the termination of our formal presentation with you, in the chat, we would like you to just spend a moment contemplating on what might be a barrier that you have encountered in your career journey. What might be that barrier that you encountered? Was it pathway? Was it at the human resource level? Was it just the unique challenges that you had as a woman, that there was just no way that you could be the high school principal and be the mother of 3? What were the barriers that you encountered in your career journey? So please just take a few minutes. Was it underestimation? Yes, thank you to Thought Exchange. Thought Exchange will be sponsoring our Leading Well Female Conference. Thank you, Heidi Baker. What challenges? The good old boys. Mommy guilt. Mommy guilt. I'm not sure if men feel this.
Nope.
When does that go away? My daughters are in their 40s and I still have it. Mom guilt. Untraditional pathway. Mom guilt is real. Being told I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Community expectations that a woman couldn't possibly do that job.
Wow.
Those networks.
Andrea.
Work-life balance. Yeah, it's a tough one. We need the organization to accommodate work-life balance. Wait.
Time is not now. Yeah, the time is now.
Yeah, the time is now.
Time is now.
That good old boys club, it is real and it is there, but we are here to say to you that we are creating a good old women's club. a good old girls club. And we are here to be with you and stand alongside you and to help you move into that role, because we are creating our own networks, our own network that is going to move us into the position of leading in executive roles.
Next slide, please. So as we conclude this part of our time with you, and again, we are saving some time for some questions, and we're very excited about Thought Exchange coming and helping us to end the session together. But may we be reminded that our children are watching. And, you know, when they look up, can they find themselves? Can they find themselves in positions of leadership? Can they find themselves not in predictable places? You know, we don't want to be predictable. You know, can they find themselves? And for our daughters, our granddaughters, our nieces, can our children find? But I'm also talking about our sons and our grandsons and our nephews. Can they see women in leadership roles? And I want to end by telling you a family story of mine, that I have a grandson, Rayo, who's 9 years old. And we were out to eat with Rayo, and the district in which I was superintendent had just got a new superintendent. And I was asking him, and he's in the district, and I was asking him if there was anything new in school today. And of course, you know, he said, no, nothing new, Grandma. And I said, oh, I know something new. I said, you have a new superintendent. He said, I do. I said, yeah, you just today, you know, I heard that you have a new superintendent. And he looked at me and he said, Grandma, is she any good? And I said, what did you say, baby? And he said, is she any good? And I said, well, what would make you think that the superintendent is a woman? And he said, well, Grandma, you were a superintendent, so I just assumed. And I thought, wow, our children are watching. And when they see something, they recognize that that is absolutely a possibility. And I assured him that he would be fantastic. But I share that story with you because that was just that reminder to me that, yeah, our children are watching. And I would like to turn this over to Thought Exchange. And Thought Exchange has a question for us. The question is, what challenges resonated with you most, and how can ACSA help? And the live results will be briefly reviewed. And so if you've not done Thought Exchange before, Josh is going to flash it on the screen, and all you have to do is scan the QR code. And we're going to give you just, you know, about 4 minutes to scan the code and put something in Thought Exchange. And let's see what resonates most with our participants today. So what challenges resonated with you the most? And what are some ways that ACSA can help you? So enter your thoughts into Thought Exchange. And again, we want to thank Heidi Baker and Thought Exchange for being an incredible partner to ACSA. And as was stated, our very first sponsors for the conference. Just give you a few minutes. And then when we finish, we're going to take a look at the live results. And then we're going to open it up for some questions. So we'll have about 15 minutes remaining for any questions that you may have.
So we need to see some, oh, there's 41 participants there already. Yeah.
Margarita says if you prefer not to scan, you can participate she attached in the chat. Renee Bryant is saying Heidi is saying to hover over the QR code with your camera or QR scanner, or use the link in the chat. This is such a tremendous way to just gain data and be able to hear the voices of others in an expedient, efficient, and creative way.
So folks have already started the ratings using the star rating process.
Be showing those thoughts in just a moment. Heidi says to share your thought and then tap the star and rate the thoughts of others. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
What resonated with you?
And just some of the things that are resonating, just to be able to share your story. Stories are so important. Oftentimes the stories that we're hearing, they're counter narratives to the narratives that have been put out there for women in leadership. And so that is really what Leading Well Female is about, creating that space to be heard, to be validated, because your stories are real.
So let's just take a look at some of the top concepts that resonated with you. Just thinking about being part of a powerful group of women colleagues. I mean, that's you. You can do that. You can be accountable for that, for emailing all of your female colleagues in leadership roles and say, you know what, let's form something. I'm excited to tell you that in the Oxnard Union High School District, we meet once a month with all of the female leaders of the district, and we just focus on leading well female. Another one was there are many barriers to our systems. More opportunities like tonight, great strength in women in leadership roles. I saw someone in the chat said, you know, are there book clubs? There are book clubs popping up all over the nation, and you know, frankly, we can't keep up with them all. But the way you can keep up with them is to join our Facebook. And I know that Riverside Unified School District just wrote me and said, you know, we're starting a book club.
Those of you who are elementary school principals, you may have heard of this, and Jessica's on right now, but the National Association for Elementary School Principals actually have multiple sisterhood book clubs that are starting up around the nation.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one that rose to the top, that networking is our power.
Mm-hmm.
The Imposter Syndrome. Pathways that we create to higher leadership roles rather than only creating those pathways.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw a post in the chat from one of our superintendents, Maria Pulin, who is saying that you know, she's formed a network of 10 women, and actually I've seen pictures of you all on Facebook. You know, it just looks fantastic to just be supporting each other. Having a system of support of other women is powerful. We've got to stop being our own worst enemies. When we look at what's in the way, if we are in the way, you know, I say, come on, we're better than that. Our children are watching.
And to know that it is all right for us to reach back and tap on women colleagues on the shoulder, that is just fun. We don't have to be afraid, wondering what will happen to them if they happen, you know, to fail or something like that. We are going to be there to hold one another up. And we're going to keep one another from, you know, there may be mistakes that are made. There will be mistakes that are made. We know that our male counterparts make mistakes. And we also know that we can be there to support one another.
I had a male superintendent recently, you know, expressed some concerns about, you know, the women are, you know, kind of forming together. You know, I had to respond by saying, you know, men have been doing that for centuries, and it's worked out really well for you. This is not about you, with all due respect. It's about us. It's about us. You know, join us.
I was on a panel for a principalship, an assistant principalship, and one committee member said, well, if we hire her, that's going to put 3 women at that school as administrators. And I had the opportunity to say, and how many of our schools in our district have 3 men already? You know, so it was like, well, it's okay to have 3 men, but it's not okay to have 3 women. So sometimes it's just about bringing the level of awareness.
Mhm.
Stacy, that reminds me of the quote that you frequently tell about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yep, that is my favorite quote. And that is where she was asked, how many women will be enough on this U.S. Supreme Court? And she said 9. When there is 9, there will be enough. We never questioned whether or not there were too many males on the U.S. Supreme Court when it was all males. And so we indeed should not question that. Should there ever be the point where there are all females, all women that are in that role? Especially when,
we've had 46 presidents of this nation, and 46 out of 46 have been males. And so for us to question, let's not get in the way. Hello, Barbara Boggio. I'm seeing one of my old colleague friends. Hi, Barbara. We've stopped our formal presentation, and we have about 10 minutes. And we would love to just take any questions, comments, thoughts, stories, whatever it is that you might like to share. And we would just love to hear a few of your voices as we end the evening. Anyone?
And this is just
Thank you.
open mic.
Yeah.
Just thank you. This was, as a new administrator, this was great. It's good to see 13 pages. I can only see 6 at a time, 8 at a time. So this is a lot of powerful women, and I'm sure I'll see you in the future and see your books and see your faces, and maybe sit up on the stage in an interview with someone like with Miss Lindsey that time. So I had a similar experience, and Letty was walking back and forth, and it was just the rudest thing. So I didn't want to work there either, and I chose to, withdraw my application. So thanks for all the good thoughts and good karma. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you. Take care.
Be safe.
Bye. Thank you.
Who else? Open mic.
I'd like to say something. I just want to thank you. It is so nice to be in a room with such powerful women who want to help other women. I think, sometimes I call it the Mexican crab syndrome, where you put a bunch of crabs in the bucket and one gets out and you want to pull it down, kind of at that level playing field, right? And so this is so nice to see so many women that want to help other women. And I think that's what we lack sometimes in leadership, is that camaraderie. We hear about the good old boys club. We need a good old girls club, where we can support each other, mentor each other, pull each other through those pipelines to help each other. I've said I'm actually working on my dissertation, and I thought, well, I'm not going to shatter the ceiling, but I'm cracking it for my daughters, and we're leading the way. So I just want to thank everybody who's here, and thank the 3 of you. Thank you so much. You've truly been inspirational, and I really do appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Erica.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
And there's still time to shatter that ceiling, Erica. There's still time.
Or I'm gonna do it. I just don't know when. But it'll be like a ginger house ceiling, but I'm gonna do it.
All right. That's good.
One of our powerful superintendents.
Hi, it's so great to see you, Trudy. We were so in love with you. Just everything you had to say when you came to talk to us at Whittier City, that we were all quoting you. We were all saying, not on our watch, not on our watch. So we just love it. We're so inspired. And for me, it's very important to build up a pipeline of courageous, strong leadership, women leaders. And so for today, I invited 10 of my principals, assistant principals, assistant superintendents, and they're with us today. And I also belong to a sister circle made up of women from across the United States, and we are supportive of each other. And so I know that sometimes it feels like women can be super competitive and that we're haters of other women who are successful. But I want you to know that there are people out there who want to see women succeed. And this is what we look like. So all the squares here on Zoom, this is what we look like. And if anyone needs anything, I am here. I am willing to support anyone who needs anything. Reach out to me at my district. For the people who work with me, I want to see them in charge of a school, eventually in charge of a district. And I want them to all be superintendents. I want them to all leave me eventually and go out and do great things things on behalf of our children in our community across the state of California. That's all I ask, just stay in California. That's it. But thank you. Thank you for inspiring me and inspiring the great women that are here. So if you need anything, people, reach out to me. I'm here to help as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I love your quote of this is what we look like. You know, this is us. Anybody else?
Alice Petrosa. Hello, Alice.
Alice.
Hi.
And then
Yes.
I bring you greetings from Randy and me. It's been years. Hello.
It has been. And when everyone was saying you were their best friend, I was going to type in, and Randy was my best friend. Because he was truly a male that mentored and supported me. And I know, ladies, that we need each other, but we also need great men like Randy to encourage us to do what we do. By the way, Randy and his colleagues were the reason that as a student I joined ACSA. So if you're on this and you're not a member of ACSA, trust us, you need to be a member.
And Alice, Randy Lindsey is at the top of my list too. You know, when I think of opportunities I've had, I always go back to Dr. Randy Lindsey. Natalie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Spivak. I'm really happy to be here and to see some familiar faces I haven't seen for a while. I work through Los Angeles County Office of Education at their Specialized Arts High School. And I had a very interesting experience that I think just speaks so much into what we're talking about tonight, under the theme of kind of the power of narrative. And when I came into the position, as you know, working in the arts, it's very deeply entrenched in the white male culture. And so this high school, when I came in, I was like, oh man, this is going to be a lot of work. But then as we went into the pandemic and Zoom and everything that's been happening politically, our students were in uproar, and they were so energized, and they were suddenly over this platform of Zoom starting to do things where they were really speaking up. And my students started meeting with me over the summer to tell, because I was the new kid on the block in the school, and they're like, you know, Miss Spivak, this is certain things that are happening. We just need you to know. And one of those things was especially, and this is not just this one department, but in the music department, the kids go to high school in the morning and then they go to these arts classes in the afternoon. In this part of the music department, there was all this sexism that was happening and all of this exclusion that was happening, where they were not using any female composers, they weren't having any female musicians coming in, and it was spilling into like a toxic environment where the boys were actually starting to bash on the girls because they had all these examples about basically why boys were better. And what was really interesting is they were imploring me, like, please, Miss Spivak, on the first day of school, you need to say this is not okay. And using that narrative, we were able to speak with the music teachers, and we have so many male allies that they just maybe don't have, like, having that narrative, like, this is important. So now they're having like female composers come in, female guest artists come in, and it's changed the tone of everything. And I think that's so important in our work, is that making those bold stances of, you know, our children are watching us, making those stances of this is important, really emboldens the people around us that are already singing those songs. So I'm just really happy to be here and to hear your voices, because we have to be louder than the counter narratives, right? So thank you, and I hope I didn't take too much time.
Not at all.
No.
And Natalie, I remember when you were hired as, you know, the first director of a band at a high school. And it was, I mean, that was quite big in itself. And again, we're not talking about our grandmothers. We're talking about, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So that whole aspect of we've come a long way. We've got a long way to go too, don't we?
And good for you, Natalie, to step out and create a new protocol. Yeah. That is the epitome of leading while female. Listening to your kids, allowing their voice to be the narrative, and stepping out to lead for them.
If you you don't mind me adding, I think what really helped me was that, and that's what I've been doing right now, not just for making sure we amplify our female voices, but our people of color, our trans community. So many communities need to be amplified right now, and we need to not be putting the labor on them to be amplified. And so the tool that I've been using is the restorative justice questions and the restorative justice principles. So when there was a harm of the girls feeling that way, I used those protocols to meet with the teachers that were in power that could do something about it. Mm-hmm. I just like to offer that to the group. Like, those are really clear, clean protocols to deal with some pretty messy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we honor your time, knowing that I'm sure, you know, behind the doors, you got a lot going on, people waiting on you. But we again would just really like to thank ACSA for hosting this event. And really, again, I just want to personally thank ACSA for helping to get us through this pandemic, you know, helping to keep us fresh and to keep us clear and to keep us motivated, keep us knowledgeable, and to be able to connect and interact on a virtual platform. So thank you to Margarita Quizan Armelino. I also want to thank Josh, who's been in the background running the slides for us, you know, just always such a tremendous help. And most importantly, we just want to thank all of you. You know, thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. And most importantly, thank you for leading while female. We have one last slide to show you. Josh, if we could take the very final slide.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Nope, not that one. Next one.
I love that one.
That one's adorable, though.
Okay, so what will you do to raise your voice in support of women leaders? And it's our time, and it's about time. And our final slide is just one that reminds us all. Next slide.
Oh, that's the last slide.
Oh, okay, then that would be the last slide. And that's probably a good one, right? It's our time, it's about time. And thank you all again so very, very much. And thank you to my colleagues, Stacy and Delores. What a privilege it is to be on this journey with you. So thanks, and so good to see you all. Good night.
Trudy, I want to see the slide of your grandchildren.
Oh, all right. Take it back. Take it back.
Beautiful slide. Absolutely.
I love it. I want to see it.
One of Stacy and Delores and I are all grandmothers.
Aww.
And we're all grandmothers of girls. And so this is Sophia. Sophia is 5. And there's Rayo, the one who said, is she any good? And Rayo is 9. So Rayo Mana and Sophia Anuhea. Just a love like no other. Mm-hmm. And you know, we want them to take the baton and run like champions. And that's what this is all about. Hand over the baton to our grandchildren, our children, our nieces or nephews, and watch them run like champions. So thanks again all. Good night.
Good night, everyone.